We're going to talk tonight a little bit about Genesis chapter 13. This morning we left off talking about two mothers, Sarai and Hagar, and the challenges that they went through. And I thank God for your attention and the thoughts we gave this morning. But we're going to back up now, chapter 13. And as you can see, the book of Genesis is a book of beginnings, a book of new things, how God started the human race with Adam and Eve, how he started the Hebrew race with Abraham and Sarah. And chapter 1 just gives one chapter. Here's how God created everything. Chapter 2, he talks about his day of rest and his day of Sabbath, and then goes on to tell us a little bit about his start of the human home with Adam and Eve and principles therein. Chapter 3, sin comes into the world, and the rest of the Bible doesn't make sense if you don't have chapter 3. It's the fall of man. And then we go on and we see in chapter 4 that Adam and Eve have two children initially, and Cain kills his brother Abel. And then you have the lineage of Cain left there as a vagabond, but his lineage, they're very talented, they're very wealthy, they're very skilled, but they're lost, and they have no interest of God. And then in chapter 4, Seth is born. Chapter 5, you see the beautiful lineage of Seth. Not much known about their talents, but known about their walk with God. As time would go on, another 1,500 years, there would be a flood, a need for a flood. God was frustrated because the thoughts of man were evil continually. And in chapter 6, he says, I'm destroying everything I made. I regret that I have made man, and he's just turned on me like this and gone his own way and thought so wicked and evil. The things that hurt me, that's what they do. But then the Bible says Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. And chapter 6, 7, and 8 are about the flood and how God remembered Noah, took care of Noah. And then chapter 9, you'll have the lineage of Noah's sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. And then the Tower of Babel, 10 and 11. And then chapter 12, we get introduced to a young couple, or not such a young couple, an older couple, but Abram and Sarai. They live in the Ur of the Chaldees. But God asked him to leave that comfortable environment, that he was all he knew, leave his kinsmen, leave his occupation, leave his house, and go out on a lifelong camping trip and live in a tent. And he did it only because God told him to. But Abraham was a very special man. He wasn't without flaws. We see right after he comes out of Egypt and he leaves his dad. His dad dies in Terah there. He passes away in Haran. And then he brings his nephew Lot with him. And they go out. And then he comes into a bad time, a famine. And he makes, instead of trusting God through his difficult time, he makes his way into Egypt. And there, of course, he resorts to deceit, telling his wife that you're not my wife here, you'll be my sister. And it's kind of only a half lie, but we got to do this because they're going to kill me. And you don't want me to die because I'm helping you. And it didn't go very good. And the thing that they had feared, she came into Pharaoh's harem. And yet, God protected Sarah. This is unbelievable how God protected. And it wasn't his first time to do it. He did it again, another time in Gear, and hurt her so bad with his failure and his selfishness. And yet, God was merciful to him. But he comes out of Egypt, and he has spent the time in Egypt. Now, Egypt is a type of the world in the scriptures. But he has spent some time in Egypt. And God would bring him out of Egypt, but it would be a challenge getting Egypt out of him. And it's even more so in his younger nephew, Lot. Lot got pretty comfortable in Egypt. He liked what he saw there. But it was time to leave, and he came out, and when they came out, they had possessions. They were wealthy. Look at verse number 1, if you would, please, in your Bible. Follow along with me, and I want to make some points, I think, tonight that can be helpful to us in our day-to-day living. And Abram went up out of Egypt, and he and his wife and all that he had, Lot with him, and to the south. So they left Egypt. It was a pretty quiet ride home, I would imagine, because of all that had happened to him, and God really dealt with him. And unfortunately, he does bring Hagar, the little maid that comes along with Sarai, which will complicate things in chapter 16, as we talked about this morning. Verse 2, And Abram was very rich in cattle and silver and in gold, and he had been given a lot of riches. He was fairly wealthy before he came, but in Egypt, he got a lot of things given to him by the Pharaoh, and he allowed him to take it out with him. Verse number 3, and he went on his journeys from the south into Bethel, and the place that his tent had been at the beginning between Bethel and Ai, and then the Bible tells us, unto the place of the altar, which he had made there at the first. And there Abram called on the name of the Lord. Interesting, he was a man known for building an altar of worship, which is very impressive to God. Now in Egypt, he didn't build any altars. But when he came out, he came to this place called Bethel, and he went back to the altar that he had built for the Lord. And once again, Abraham didn't have a Bible. You and I have a Bible. He didn't have a Bible. He had just prayer. That's all he had. And he had a word that God had given him what to do. But he went every day and he stood in the place where he would meet with God. By the way, it's an important aspect. All of us need to have a time to meet with the Lord. Now, you can talk to him all day long. Charles Spurgeon was asked one day in a preacher's meeting, how long are your prayers normally? You know, how long do you pray when you start praying? And Charles Spurgeon surprised the audience by saying this. He said, most of my prayers are only 5 minutes long. And boy, it really surprised the preacher boys there. But then he said, but having said that, I usually don't go 5 minutes without praying. What he was telling them is, I pray all day long. And you should do that, but it's oftentimes very helpful for us to get to a place, turn the world off, get off the world for a minute, and get with your God. And that's one thing that Abraham did. And I love Abraham because a lot of things about Abraham that really are impressive. But one thing was impressive about Abraham is Abraham didn't just know God, but God knew him. God had confidence in him. Now, he had confidence in God, but God had confidence in Abraham. And that's a very coveted position. You want to be someone that God can entrust. Now, one challenge of this that he was successful with, but his nephew was not, was in possessions. There's nothing wrong with possessions, especially when you get the money wisely and you get the money honestly. You work hard for it and God blesses you for it. There's nothing wrong with that. But you also have to stay in conscious awareness that everything I have belongs to God. And God gives you wealth for distribution. He gives you wealth so that you can distribute. Now, you'll have to fight it tooth and nail because we don't know when enough is enough. Many of us, we want to be secure, and we put our security in finances. You know, when you look at financial markets, they tell you something at 9 o'clock in the morning, they tell you something else at 11, something else at 12, something else at 2. And when it closes, your guess is as good as mine where it's going to close. And they tell you it's up and down, all the markets of the world, and it's never like this. You know, that's the way finances are. But God had blessed Abram. He was very rich in cattle and silver, and God had really encouraged him. And he could, and then by God's grace, he seemed to learn how to handle it. We'll see later on, he tithed. All this was done, but he didn't see God. No man's seen God. And he is getting blessed by this God that he's obeyed, and he doesn't have a place to take his tithe. It's interesting, this is pre-law. Some people get upset when you talk about the tithe and it's not in the New Testament. It is in the New Testament. And I would say if an Old Testament saint would give a tithe and well beyond that to the Lord, he doesn't even know who the Messiah is. It's a mystery to him, and we had the mystery solved. And we would give less than a tithe after we know about Christ and salvation. Oh, what in the world are we thinking? Now, Abraham figured this out. He understood God too. He understood him. Whenever he finally saw the representation of God in the person of Melchizedek, an Old Testament appearance of Jesus Christ, we believe, according to Hebrews, when he found out he represented the God of heaven that talked to him, he said, hold the phone, Joan. Don't go anywhere. I got to give you tithes of all. He said, if you're representing the Most High God, then you stay still just for a second. Let me give you what I know is right to do. And it is right to do that. But it's kind of neat that we see about this. But God had given him the funds, and he understood stewardship. Lot, on the other hand, had some struggles. So they come out of Egypt, and they're both fairly wealthy, and so the characters of our story are really Abraham and his nephew Lot and the herdsmen that are here, the guys that work for both of them, and then two groups of people, the Perizzites and the Canaanites. So those are the characters of chapter number 13. And we find here that once they come out and they settle in, that there's some issues. It's not really between Abraham and Lot, it's between the guys that work for them. Because they're wealthy, but the land is not able to hold both of them without their subordinates fighting with each other. So there's an argument going on continually. Well, no, we got this field. We're watering at this time. No, you're not. We're going to get that watering time. I have to come over here again. Now, come on. And their herdsmen begin to argue with each other, and we see a conflict. Now, conflict is about as normal as being a human being. And Jesus said, when he talked to his disciples, he said, it's impossible to live in this world without some conflict. There's going to be an offense. I'm going to offend you, you're going to offend me. In marriage it happens. It happens with parents and children. It happens in the workplace. It happens in the local church. Conflict is going to be a reality. And so we're going to see a conflict here. We see the characters. Now we see a conflict. Let's look at it again if we can, back up to verse 6. And the land was not able to bear them. It wasn't big enough to take care of them and their herds, that they might dwell together. For their substance was great. And sometimes possessions create some challenges. Possessions oftentimes become possessive. And it creates more stuff. It gets more complicated. And here they had so much stuff and that they couldn't function together, so they could not dwell together. Now verse number 7. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's cattle and the herdsmen of Lot's cattle. And the Canaanites and the Perizzites dwelled therein in the land. So it's very interesting. God is saying in this process, there were two men who had a lot of money and a lot of possessions, and those who managed their possessions were in spats continually. But God makes it very clear that one of the major factors is there were unsaved people watching these fights going on. There were Perizzites and Canaanites who are not God's people observing these two leaders, and somewhat patriarchs, would be a patriarch in time, fight each other. And God puts that right there in the scriptures. Now let's look at verse number 8. And I want you to read it out loud with me. Would you please, everyone? Verse number 8. And Abram said unto Lot, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdmen, for we be brethren. That's Ebonics. That's a throwback, isn't it? He said, we be brethren. Hey, we are brothers. And he said, I'm praying to you. Listen, Lot, we got some problems here, and I don't want the strife between you and between me and between my workers and your workers, because we're brothers. We're family. We're Hebrews. And we're airing out our dirty laundry in front of unsaved people. This is not the way it needs to happen. Notice verse number 9, we see his next thing. Is not the whole land before us. We've got a lot more property here. Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, then I will go to the right. If thou wilt depart from the right hand, then I will go to the left. And I want you to notice verse number 11. And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even like the garden of the Lord, like in the land of where? Egypt. He remembered that as they that cometh into Zoar. And then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan. And Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves one from the other. It's interesting here is just several things that we can observe from the scriptures. But you first see the characters in this chapter. Now you see the conflict. And then you see Abram taking on a mindset of the Lord. Now, how we handle conflict is very, very important. And I don't have a corner on it. I don't know everything about this. But here's what I do know. Only by pride cometh. So I know one thing about conflict. I've got to evaluate, do I have pride hiding? Because if I don't approach conflict with humility, I'm going to fuel the flame. A failure, and when we're not humble, then we get angry. I don't sense any anger here in Abraham's voice. Do you? Do you sense him getting fired up with his nephew? No, I don't sense some anger. So the wrath of man does not work the righteousness of God. You will not do the right thing when your anger is upset. How many could say, raise your hand and say, I am proof of that? Yes. We get angry. We say things we shouldn't say. Our mouth goes in drive while our brain still stays in neutral. And we start saying things that are hurtful, wrong, wicked. And he says, first of all, when you approach a conflict, you have to deal with your pride. And so many times, pride is a problem. And when you get that, you're just fueling a conflict pride. The Bible says, soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. And we have to decide, do we want to do this thing God's way, or are we going to do it our way? Well, the way my dad taught me, let me tell you something, Daddy wasn't right on that. God's right. You're not going to have to answer to Daddy about that. You're going to answer to God about that. Well, the way I was raised, or this is how I am, listen, let me just tell you, you might want to humble yourself when you face a conflict. Number two, you need to realize that conflict is not about you. It's not about your job. It's not about your marriage. It's not about your wife. It's not about your husband. It's a lot bigger than that. There is a lot of things going on. You say, well, you know, I tell you my problem is, it's this guy at work, this girl at work. No, that's not your problem. Tell you, if my wife can't learn some things, it's not your wife. Well, my husband, my dad, my mom, I'm not saying that they're perfect. They're not perfect. But everybody you want to blame in the problem, your problem is bigger. Conflict is bigger than you. It's bigger than me. There's something deeper going on here. And remember, the devil, he's the author of confusion. His wisdom is earthly and devilish and sensual. And it creates confusion in every evil work. There's nothing that skews our ability to see things the way God sees them, quite like interpersonal conflict. It'll mess with you. It'll keep you up at night. It'll cause you to close your eyes and try to rest, and you can't help but think about that person. It's like drinking poison, hoping it hurts the person that hurt you. It'll keep you nailed to the floor, as we had demonstrated for us by the man who spoke for the marriage retreat. Who am I thinking of there? Brother Humbert. Yeah, great illustration. It's like drilling a stake into your foot. And it hurts like all get out. And you're thinking, okay, well, I'm going to take care of this. And actually, you can't go anywhere. You just keep going around and around in circles because of bitterness and conflict. And some folks, strife is their life. I mean, if they don't have drama going on, it's not going on. And it feeds their dopamines in their mind, and it gives them all kinds of energy. If they can't find something wrong, they're looking for something wrong. They're looking for drama on their social media. They're wondering, what did he mean by that? What does she mean by that? Why did he say this to me? Why did she say that? And that's where we got to go back to the wisdom that's from above, which is first pure, then peaceable, then gentle, then easy to be entreated, full of good works, full of mercy, without partiality and without hypocrisy. Then we can have peace sown. You got to have peace to make progress. Now, Lot didn't get this. Abraham got it. Lot probably didn't care. He was going to fight to get what he deserved. He was going to make sure his boys got the watering hole. He's going to make sure that he got what he deserved. And there are Christians, unfortunately, and by the way, Lot was a Christian. We'll meet Lot in heaven. I think he'll so sorely regret the way he lived. But he was a righteous soul. We'll see him in heaven. But he didn't realize that the conflict was bigger than him and Uncle Abram. It was that unsaved people were being affected by it. Letters being written. Oftentimes in our movement, I got a letter the other day from a group of people, anonymous, telling me all the negative things about a local pastor in our area, how that we shouldn't trust him. He's using his power unjustly, and blah, 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 blah. And we're all concerned, not only for our church, but for the community at large. And we want you to know these are the things we have against this pastor. And it's all anonymous. I shouldn't have even read half of it. But you know, it's interesting. They're wasting. They sent to me, and they sent to multiple people. It's paid stamps, printing, send it out and waste everybody's time and just fuel the fire. It's ridiculous. But conflict is based in pride. Now, I want to say this with this caveat. We understand that God has given us faith once delivered to the saints. And we have to contend for the faith. But I don't think you have to contend with people as near as much as we think we are. We think we got to fight people. You don't fight people, contend for the faith. You know what your biggest fight's going to be against? Me and you. And the fight to keep going, to finish our race faithfully. 2 Timothy chapter 2, the Bible says a servant of God must not strive. He's not supposed to be a fighter. He's not supposed to be a brawler. He's not supposed to be a striker. He says God's people, God's servants, aren't known for striving. But they're going to be gentle with all men, apt to teach, ready to help someone when they're ready to receive some help. Patient, in meekness, working with someone, instructing someone who opposes themselves. If God peradventure would give them repentance to acknowledge of the truth, that you can recover yourself out of the snare of the devil. We find here a conflict. And a conflict must be approached with the understanding that I must exercise humility here. By the way, God resisteth the... Man, I'll tell you what, life is hard enough without having God against you. He said, look, I have no interest in helping you, John, if you want to be a proud person. If it's all about your thinking, your feelings, your desires, I'll let you slug it out on your own. And I'll resist you. I don't know about you, but I'm not interested in that. I need the help of God, and so do you. And the stakes are higher. The stakes are high, so the struggle is going to be real, and humility is a must. Number 2, don't start playing the blame game. To everybody else, everybody else, everybody else, everybody else. You know how that sounds like a baby doing that? That's a baby's talk. God put you in this world, and he said, it's bigger than you. And Abraham said, look, these Perizzites and Canaanites, I know most of them are going to hell in a handbasket. But we're brothers. We cannot be known for our arguments. This is good. So Abraham went to all those herdmen and all those people and told what his idea was going to do. Is that what he did? No, he went to one person. Who was that one person? Lot. Now, this is a killer in conflict. When people go to everybody else, find out how they feel about everything, instead of going to the person that you've offended or we got a problem with. Jesus would tell his disciples, listen, if you got a problem with a brother, go to him. And if you fix it together with you and him or you and her, then you've won a brother or sister. And the circle of knowledge is very small and it's solved. More times than not, if we do things biblically, it works better. Then you don't have to retract what you said on Facebook. Then you don't have to retract what you said to everybody else and wonder once again when you're done, then you don't have everybody else and their mother know all about your business. Because you go right to the person, he went right to them, and he took the high road, as we can see that, right? I think Abraham walked with God, Lot just walked with Abraham. And he was the beneficiary of everything that God was blessing Abraham with. And Abraham had every right to say, listen, you little peep squeak, take your little cows and get out of here. This is mine. You're here because I brought you. I took care of you when your dad died, and I'm taking care of you. Now, why in the world you're going to be fighting with me? Knock it off. Go find some pasture and figure it out. But he didn't. He took a high road, which is very unusual today. Spiritual people have three strong qualities. Number one, they're separated. Number two, they're sanctified. Number three, they're sacrificial. Now that's a mouthful right there. Being truly separated from the world, clean and set apart for God, and then sacrificial without making it a big deal. I just get to do this. I don't have to do it. It's not that hard, but it's going to have to. See, we show our love to our wife, men, by sacrifice. Girls, you show your love to your God and to your husband by surrender. But learning to sacrifice is no walk in the park. Greater love hath no man than this, that a man does what? What did Jesus do for us? He sacrificed. And Abraham showed his separation. He showed his understanding. Listen, we're Christians. We're Hebrews in the middle of a bunch of heathens. And we can't do this. And he sanctified himself, and then he was willing to take the high road. Apostle Paul tells the church at Corinth similar things. He said, would you not just suffer the loss rather than go to court, airing out your negative stuff in front of an unsaved jury, an unsaved bailiff, an unsaved judge, an unsaved, all the people there. What in a clerk, what in the world are you doing? Handle your business. And if you can't handle it, take the loss and go make some more money. Do something else. Don't spend your time brother against brother doing this. And that is sacrifice. But also it's significant that he knew this was a bigger picture. It wasn't about gains or losses. It's about the name of God. It's about an unsaved world. It's about people who are watching. And he says, look, Lot, you make the choice. If you go left, I'll go right. Look at all this area. And if you go right, I'll go left. I'm good. And he gave him the high road. And then we see Lot. I like the fact that Abraham was very direct. He had discernment, and he was thinking about the dignity of God. He was very direct with him, and he was decisive, and he thought about the dignity and the worthiness of God, and that's why he approached him. But we see that Lot was just a sad example of someone who couldn't handle possessions. And he loved cattle more than he loved his kids. He loved possessions and security more than he loved his future and his God. We don't see Lot building too many altars. We don't see that worship element. Oh, he's glad to have the blessings. But he wasn't part of sacrifice himself. Notice what he does real quickly, and we see this. The Bible tells us here, and Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan. Then Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves one from another. And Abram, verse 12, dwelt in the land of Canaan. Lot dwelt in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent towards Sodom. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord. How? Exceedingly. This is bad news, man. And you know, Lot is interesting because Lot had a weak devotional life. You know what will make you make some dumb decisions and wrong decisions? Is when you really don't walk with God. You're glad to go to church. You're glad to go to Sunday school. You're glad to listen to the radio. You're glad to be encouraged. But you and I we have a weak devotional life. And he did. He had a weak, but he also had a worldly bent. He had a lot of Egypt inside of him. And just to remind you, friend, you can't be one with God until you decide to be two with sin. You can't love flowers and not hate some weeds. And Lot thought he could have the world and he could have God's blessing too. And that quickly showed that's not going to happen. He had a worldly appetite. Listen, we're in the world, but God doesn't want the world in us. James, he ends chapter 1 saying, and if someone really is religious, he said they'll bridle their tongue. They'll be benevolent in their way. They'll be a giving person. And they'll keep themselves unspotted from the world. When I eat Linda's spaghetti, I try to keep myself unspotted. Can't believe I'd miss a mouth this big, but I do. And I'm wiping my face, and making sure, and I look in my mirror, and if I see those spaghetti spots, that man. And you know what we're supposed to do in this world? We're supposed to keep the world off of us. You're in the world, but you don't want the world in you. And it's a challenge. But Lot had no interest. Lot, man, he had a real appetite for the world. We got young people, and I love you, but you cannot live a holy life on a diet of the next Netflix. You're whistling in the wind if you think you're going to have a godly life and keep the music you have on your stupid phone. You're not going to do it. And you want to say, well, I had someone the other day tell me, and I had someone call me from a distant state telling me that they sang a song in one of our Sunday school classes, and they said, now, Pastor Wilkerson doesn't like this, but it's a good song. Well, I don't know. It's not about me. But the truth of the matter is, you start taking on all the world's music and put the music of the world, and you want to do that, and you're trying to live a godly life, you won't. You'll be like Lot. You'll have a real appetite for the world, and that's what he had. He wasn't a bad person, terrible. Matter of fact, the Bible says the wickedness of Sodom vexed him. It really tore him up. But then it led him to wrong decisions. Yeah, he was wild at heart. He was weak in his devotion, and it led him to wrong decisions. And whenever given the chance, he said, I'll take this area over here, the well part here. And then when he pitched his tent and separated from from Abraham, he pitched his tent and he just got to look. And by the way, the appetite of what you see becomes really your heart's desire. And it wasn't too many verses later you'll find that Lot is not just pitched his tent in Sodom, he's in it. He's in the city council of Sodom. I want to ask you to be careful about this. And here, let me just say this. Once again, based upon the Bible, is Lot in heaven or hell right now? He's in heaven. Okay? And I think all of us have a choice. And if you're here today and you haven't chose between heaven or hell, you need to. It's by grace that you're saved through faith. Okay? So most of us on a Sunday night, you're here. Now, if you continue to rebel or let pride or procrastination keep you from getting saved, that's on you. I don't know what to tell you, but I hope you'll get saved tonight. Okay? But most of us have made our decision between heaven and hell. But some of us were not like Abraham. Your next decision is between heaven and earth. Are you going to live a heavenly life or an earthly life? We made our choice to heaven and hell, and so didn't Lot. Lot's in heaven. He made his decision in heaven and hell, put his faith in the God of Abraham, Uncle Abe. But his problem was not heaven and hell. His problem was heaven and earth. That's why Jesus said, lay up for yourselves treasures in. Set your affections on things, not on things on the earth. The wisdom from this world is earthly, sensual, devilish. Love not the world, neither things are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in them. See, Lot had a very worldly appetite, and it led him to a very bad end. We can read more about that later. He becomes captive. He becomes subject to being tortured. He gives his daughters potentially to be hurt by a bunch of sodomites. It's terrible. The things he does it blows my mind. At the end of all his authority and all of his wealth, he couldn't get 10 people to leave Sodom and Gomorrah at the end. But it didn't start there. It started here with a weak devotional life. How's your devotional life? How's your walk with God? Are you just walking with your bus captain? Are you just walking with your Sunday school teacher? Years ago, I had someone tell Brother Eddie, he said, this Wilkerson guy, he acts like we all ought to walk with God. I just need a preacher that walks with God. Well, you know, I don't know who this guy was, but the truth of the matter is, all of us are supposed to walk with God. You know, you say, well, I just want my pastor to be a holy guy. No, you ought to be holy too. You ought to walk with God. Be careful with your appetite for the world, because it'll lead to wrong decisions that lead to wrong destinies. If you're here tonight, you've already decided your heaven and hell question. Your next question is heaven and earth. Are you going to be someone says every once in a while, oh, and by the way, some of our parents don't want their kids to serve God. You don't want them to go to camp because you're afraid God might call them. Are you crazy? That would be a thrill to know your kids can be used of God to make an impact in people's lives where the archer can't go. That's a good thing. Now, in offering time, you ought to say, what can I do to invest in heaven? When we think about missionaries' needs, we ought to think, what do I need? What can I do? What do I need? How about my soul winning? How about my tracts? What things are heavenly things? Our challenge is going to be here. Unfortunately, Lot got what he wanted. And then Abraham walked away to a not such a nice place. But God walked away with him. I want you to notice this real quickly. We won't go through the rest of the chapter, but I want you to notice this. Look at verse 10. And what it says there, the first line of verse 10. And Lot lifted up his what? Eyes. I want you to look at verse 14. And the Lord said unto Abram, after Lot was separated from him. What did God say to Abram? Read the rest of that line, would you? Lift up. Hey, and look in the place where thou art northward, southward, eastward, westward. He said, get up there, and now you lift up your eyes. Now, Lot did it himself, and he just saw one little view of the well-watered plain of Jordan and Sodom. That's all he saw. And God says, okay, he lifted his eyes, and that's what he sees. And that's what you'll see if you're worldly. That's what you'll see. That's what I'll see if we're weak in our devotion. We'll just see the little picture. But then he said, now, whenever Lot took his way and Abraham walked away to a little bit more barren area, God took a walk with him and said, now, Abraham, now you lift up your eyes. Now, I want you to look this way. I want you to look that way. I want you to look that way. I want you to look that way. I want you to see all that, because that's yours. And I'm yours. And this is your seed, and we're going to have a lot of fun together. And God blessed Abraham because he took the high road. He learned how to settle a conflict. And I don't know about you, but I want God to go with me. And I want to go with him. He got deeper pockets than I do. I'll close with this. You probably heard this story 1,000 times, but let me tell it to you again. When the kids were little, Linda got some white carpet in our house, and she really wanted everybody to put the shoes by the door. And the little chair there, and we all came in. We took our shoes off and put them by the door. And could you just imagine, 10 people live in the same house. There's 20 shoes sitting there. But we did that, and when I would get ready to go somewhere, my kids, the little ones, they couldn't hardly even talk yet, walk yet. When I start putting my shoes on, start tying my shoes, sitting in the chair, they come up to me and they're scurrying around trying to find their shoes. And they bring the shoes and they bring it up, and I'm tying my shoe and they're putting it up by their nose. Daddy, I go. I said, what are you talking about? Oh, Dad, I go. I put my shoes on. I go. I said, where am I going? They go, I don't know. I said, why do you want to go? You know why they want to go? Because Dad has money and they're broke. Because Dad rarely goes anywhere without stopping by Dunkin' Donut or 7-Eleven. And they know if they go with Dad, he can drive. They don't drive. And he likes to go places, and when they come back, they usually have a Slurpee or something fun. And the truth of the matter is, when God puts his shoes on, you want to put your shoes on. Because he's got deep pockets, he's got big plans, he sees the big picture, and you're in it. Or you can keep on looking at Sodom. You can pitch your little tent and care more about cattle than your kids. Let's pray together, can we please?